As you may know, I'm Tom, started here on Alba Orbital. And my talk today is all about launching 57 PocketQubes, which is quite a lot of PocketQubes. The question is, can PocketQube standard reach a tipping point? And I guess this is someone who's been in the field for pretty much all my adult life, trying to promote PocketQubes and push them forward and try and get them accepted by the space industry. We are starting to hit some level of tipping point. Obviously, there's different levels to that. We've launched 10 times now. So these are a collection of our launches so far. We started off with our first Electron launch in 2019, which actually was quite a long time ago now, to be honest. It's like nearly 7 years ago since our first launch, which is kind of crazy. Since then, obviously, we've done quite a lot of Falcon 9s. No one really needs to tell me to tell you how successful SpaceX have been at launching lots of satellites, and we've really benefited from primarily the transporter program. This really came around in the last sort of 4 or 5 years, and it's really allowed the small satellite sector to really grow. And before that, obviously, that was difficult. That's kind of why Electron started. But even before that, our first ever launch was supposed to go from Russia, and it never happened. So the fact that we're actually able to get regular access to space, and actually we are launching the 11th one some point in the next few days. Whenever SpaceX tell you we're launching, it's when we're launching, basically. Can't confirm to any dates otherwise. So yeah, that's quite a lot of launches. And here's what it looks like in graph format. So as people may be aware, we didn't really do much between 2013 and 2019 as a community, unfortunately. I started my company just around the time that we launched the first of our PocketQubes. I seen it, I was like, that's really inspiring. People have flown this satellite called $50 satellite. $50 sat, as it's known. There's a few other satellites as well, which maybe are a little bit less famous. And they open sourced it all, and I was like, wow, this is amazing. We can build satellites and put them in orbit for $50, which is the most misleading type of satellite name I've ever heard. It certainly wouldn't pass an audit, put it that way, unfortunately. So yeah. Basically, Alba's launched a lot, and we have quite a lot of market share, obviously. I think everyone's aware of that. So these are the first 100 satellites, or first 100 PocketQubes that I've launched. And in my previous talks, I was sort of chatting about how getting to 100 PocketQubes is such a big deal for the community. Once we can get to triple digits, that, to me, is like a huge new level. And we launched the 10th PocketQube, and then we launched the 100th PocketQube, and hopefully, we'll try and launch the 1000th PocketQube at some point in the future. And you can kind of see the growth, obviously, a nice compound kind of growth rate there. And we launched the 100th one there, and I think it was the end of November, we launched that one on flight 10. So like Tibor was on that one. It's a few other satellites from Brazil and Saudi Arabia and other folks. But yeah, this shit's hard. Like honestly, launching lots of satellites, especially PocketQubes, very difficult game. I was going to maybe tell you a little bit about some of the stuff you don't see, because obviously when we put out press releases, we never tell you the bad news. We only ever tell you the good news, and it's always sunny, wherever you are when you run a company. But unfortunately, that's not reality. And the reality of building a PocketQube is still very hard, still a very difficult game. But it tends to be difficult for dumb reasons, and that's something that we have to run into pretty much every day. So as I said, we've done 57, 5 more going up in the next transport, so that gets us to 62. But the thing is, we go out and we see how many satellites we launched, Tom, and we see whatever our number is. But what people don't see is the satellites that sign up for a launch and never make it. If everybody who'd signed a contract with us had actually showed up, ready to go on the launch, we'd be at 78. That's like 16 satellites that got culled somewhere between I have a plan and I am going to execute on the plan. For me, like obviously growing the community, like we'd love to see the number of satellites that spin out a disaster, that number decrease over time. And obviously you guys today are doing the most important thing, which is show up to a conference on the topic of PocketQubes. There probably is some correlation between people that attend conferences and seek out help from other people in the field and people who sit in their silo and don't talk to anyone and wonder why their mission went really badly. So you guys are doing the right thing here. Certainly we would encourage people to meet up and share lessons learned. And it's a hard game, launching satellites reliably and regularly. It's not easy. So the question is why? Well, why are they not making it to the launch pad? Because this is like really important for everyone, right? So every year I say licensing is the biggest problem, and every year people come to Alba, buy their lunch, and don't supply their paperwork to their national jurisdiction on time and submit it properly. Just like a few weeks ago, like on this upcoming launch, we say we're going to launch 5 satellites. We signed up 7 customers. We had 7 satellites, but 2 of them didn't make it. And it's all down to getting your license done on time, submitting it to the right category, doing that early, actually sending it to the people. We've had situations where people haven't even sent it to their consultant. If you don't know what you're doing, hire a consultant. Try and find somebody in your local country that has actually actually got a license for a satellite approved at some point in their career. That would be a good starting point. That's stuff that really every year just keeps on coming up as a thing that people struggle with. Making progress on your builds. So like obviously people sign up for a launch. We're kind of expecting people who sign up for launches to actually build their satellite and have a lot of motivation to build the satellite. But every year, sometimes people just overestimate difficulty in building their satellite, or they get a little bit too ambitious maybe for their ability to execute on the project. And it's certainly better to fly a simpler satellite that does go to orbit and does work than to get carried away. And I'm guilty of getting carried away in building satellites. You know, Unicorn 2 was a bit of a cathedral of a PocketQube back in the day, and we had all bells and whistles. We probably should never really started on such an ambitious satellite so early in our development, but we did, and we learned the hard way. But we definitely recommend, there's a lot of open source stuff out there now that Dan was mentioning. There's a directory on our website with probably about 10 or so open source designs that you can literally just download for free. They work. A lot of them have flown to orbit and have heritage, and the people who create these files, if you email them and ask them nicely, or you come to a conference, you know, they might actually help you with your satellite, because they want to fly their satellites too, right? We're all kind of junkies for space, right? Paying your bills on time. That's like sort of cliche, but people don't do that either, which is kind of crazy. So some crazy stuff we've seen, it's anonymous, and it's anonymous because I don't want to like sort of embarrass anyone, but these are real scenarios that have happened to Alba. Satellite too tall for the pod. Customer, nameless, they're no longer in business, probably for other reasons, but they showed up to an integration and their satellite was too tall for the pod, which initially I was like, oh crap, maybe we'd given them the wrong drawings, but it turns out we had given them the correct drawings, and every other satellite has actually fitted in the pod that we've given them directions for. Instructions, but just stuff like that, you know, like you can do fit checks, we can do digital fit checks with teams if they want, whatever your CAD is. If you're working with Alba, at least, obviously, if you're working with somebody else, then obviously you can chat to them. If you have a CAD for a satellite, send it to us and make sure it just physically fits in the pod. Seems like a really obvious thing, and that team had flown before, you know, this wasn't a sort of rookie team, so like that did happen. Someone one time put epoxy on the tabs, so like it couldn't slide into the pods. Martin had to basically scrape off tons of epoxy off this satellite in order to basically make it work in the pod, which is another maybe easily overlooked thing to do, so it could actually slide. And this is a belter, and this actually happened, just so you know. This is not me like making stuff up. Someone remained nameless, shipped us a satellite in a Tupperware box, basically a lunch box. The satellite deployed in transit, deployed its antennas, and took a lot of damage, to be honest. And we like managed to fix this. And honestly, package it up and get it to orbit, and it worked. So like, yeah, like this actually happened, and we couldn't believe it, you know, like that someone would be so crazy to ship it in a Tupperware box. But I mean, I guess the lesson there is like, think about your packaging when you're shipping it. Like if you put it on a rail, like rails slide and they need end stops on them, make sure that your satellite cannot escape from your launch enclosure, your transportation enclosure. That was a real thing, unfortunately. And yeah, we had one team that they thought they'd emailed their licensing consultant and they never got back to them, and they were like, oh, that's strange, and they checked their outbox and it was sitting in their drafts for like 5 months, and they missed the launch because they just thought their licensing consultant was playing hard to get, basically, which obviously ultimately them not flying. And these are like sort of like the highlight reel of like crazy dumb stuff that actually happens when people come to launch a satellite, but we see it repeating and stuff, and like no one obviously is going to like sort of put it out in public. We can maybe put it out in public and honestly of things. But really the takeaway from this, in my opinion, is like missions shouldn't fail for dumb reasons, but at least 20% of the time they do. And obviously be ready to obviously fly safely. Alba launch. So I think a lot of people probably knows context of Alba launch. We are known for launching lots of PocketQubes, and we're obviously at a PocketQube conference. So maybe give you some updates on where we've got to with that, particularly on the hardware side of things. We've debuted AlbaPod V3. There was an AlbaPod V1, which probably no one ever knows about because we never flew it. So V2 debuted on Electron. To be honest, changed a little bit over the years between sort of 2019 through to our last flight, which would be like probably March 25. And we've now flown 20 or 19 AlbaPod V2s, I think, and the 20th one was the V3. And the main thing about the V3 is that we rely less on external parts and expensive sort of legacy space supply chains. So we've requalified our door with an in-house mechanism, which historically we had to buy one in, and it was very expensive. It had like some comical long lead time of like 26 weeks or something, basically quite hard to get a hold of, and was like, you know, EAR sort of export control, whereas we don't have that anymore. So it allows us to basically be more responsive when it comes to supporting launch campaigns. So we can knock together a pod now in like less than a month from like when we need to when like integration happens. So that's like really encouraging as well. And it also like keeps our economics under control, which is a big part of doing like keeping our pricing under. Like we never raised our prices in 7 years, which we've had the lowest cost price launch in the space industry for like 7 years consecutively. And we're actually launching regularly, which is like incredibly hard to do. So like having a pod that's lightweight and very low cost is a big part of that, and that'll hopefully benefit the community future. So a big challenge we have is that while we all love PocketQubes and we want to launch our PocketQubes, and that's very exciting for us, not the whole space industry doesn't necessarily quite buy into the democratizing access to space dream that we all somewhat share. So we've been flying generally 2 pods is probably our most common configuration, so 2 6P pods. And that kind of works some of the time. Occasionally we fly 1 pod, but the problems we have is that, we're really only flying 4 or 6 kilograms. Not a lot of kilograms really. Most people in the space world can't really be bothered with us in the sense that they're not going to get rich flying PocketQubes. Really what we're getting from the market is that they want us to aggregate more pods together so that we fly in bigger clusters of launches. And obviously a big part of what we're doing is to try and grow the total demand for PocketQube launch, which then in turn will mean more regular and more sustainable launch opportunities for everyone, which is really the goal, in my opinion, is that we want to have that regular, reliable cadence. And to be fair to Alba, we have launched, I think, 4 times in the last 16 months, which we can't necessarily take for granted. I know a lot of people are new to the sector and they just are sort of used to that. But when I started Alba, I waited 6 years for my first launch. And basically after 5 years, I kind of canceled the launch contract because I was fed up waiting. But we don't want to go back to that time. We really need to sort of aggregate more pods onto launches. And there will be probably a slight reduction in launch rate to accommodate us buffering all these satellites onto one launch. And we have to deal with all the sort of different schedules and challenges of getting everybody ready. And readiness really is the thing that matters, is what I'd kind of stress for trying to make this all work. So one of our solutions to this is to do an Alba quad pack. So essentially take 4 Alba pods and stick them together and fit them inside what would be kind of classically a 3 UCubeSat space. And this has the advantage of it takes up less floor space on a plate or an OTV. So it's attractive to the supply chain. And really the challenge we have is that we need to come up with a system that makes sense for the OTV companies, makes sense for SpaceX, makes sense for Alba, makes sense for the community. And it's very hard to get alignment in all those different people, to be honest. Like sometimes maybe we get a deal, we can fly quickly, it's a good deal for us, but maybe the broker loses out. To have systems that SpaceX are happy with us rocking up with 20 plus satellites, because like not a lot of mass, but to SpaceX, it's 20 pieces of paperwork, 20 licenses, potentially 20 restrictions. It's like a lot of trouble. We don't solve all our problems by going to PocketQubes and being small. There is just some overhead of each additional satellite that has to be taken into account. This pod could do 24p and is sort of based around the V3 architecture as well. Larger PocketQubes. So obviously Tibor kind of hit on what I guess we've been thinking as well, is looking at going beyond just the classical 1, 1.5 to 3Ps. And of those 100 first PocketQubes, I think there's only maybe 1 PocketQube that was larger than a 3P. So historically, we've started with the really small stuff, and we're really looking at ways that we can do more capable missions and support more users and try and keep people within the community, because I think there's a real challenge around maybe people starting with a PocketQube and then heading off and doing CubeSat. So what can we do to try and get people to their 2nd, 3rd, 4th mission within the standard and still keep what the ethos of what PocketQubes are, which is small, low-cost, quick demonstration missions that support these new companies that maybe didn't exist 5 or 10 years ago. I think that's really where we should be going. So to that end, a few examples. So obviously BME and Tibor's team, they have all the models of the 4Ps, the 5P and 6P on their bench, so you can go check them out and play around with them and see what you think. We're looking at stretching Unicorn to accommodate a potential larger lens, which I'll come on to in a sec. And here's some sort of provisional dimensions. We're going to update the ICD at some point to start to incorporate these longer satellites. And really the thing is, we've been able to support 6P from day one. 2019, we could have been flying these. It just wasn't a thing. We didn't promote it. So we've always had the capability to do this. We just really never bothered because we were all about 1Ps and 2Ps and 3Ps. But we've always been able to do this. And I think we want to try and widen the kind of appeal of PocketQubes to more demographics and demonstrate that we can do more things with PocketQubes. So this is our in-house test facilities. We recently had Smart IR rounds, tested their stuff. Thanks, Pietro and the team there. We do that as well. We have Cavu downstairs who have a booth. We've shaken a lot of their stuff for them. Got quite a lot of customers there, so obviously if people need, another big challenge is some countries or people can't get into a test house locally, so if you're one of those folks and you need to shake something, then give us a shout. Unicorn 2 updates, so people will probably know us with Unicorn 2 being our kind of flagship PocketQube platform, sort of pioneered sort of advanced 3P kind of PocketQubes over the years. And really, in my previous talks, I was really chatting about all the things we were going to do and all the challenges we had and how the really early photos were really not great and not really something we wanted to share publicly. But As you see from the photo on the left, that's Toronto, and we actually got the whole GTA, which is the whole Greater Toronto area. So we're actually now starting to get photos of Earth that look like Earth, which is really a huge improvement for us. I'm really happy, and that's taken like so much effort. Like it sounds so easy to like take a picture from a small, tiny little satellite, take a picture, but it's one of these like well, maybe not surprising to people that have built satellites previously, but it is a hard problem. Some of the other sort of cool things we've done, we fulfilled our first commercial customer, so we shipped them a picture. That was our first time that we've done that, which is awesome. Another big challenge we had was thermals. So I think probably in the last slide last year I was talking about, we went down to -37, a bit like Tibor's talk, where the temperature sensors only go so low, it turns out. Really, LiPo batteries don't want to be -35 or -40 really at all. They will just shut down on you. So we've learned that the hard way. We had to do a whole thermal redesign of the satellite. Happy to report that the thermal range of the Unicorn seems to be narrowing significantly, and that's resulted in us significantly improving uptime. So previously on the earlier flights, our record was Unicorn 2J, and 2J had lasted, I think the record was 30 days, and that was with like heavy operator input. So Elliot was like, every pass he's having to turn stuff off and turn it on at certain times and have wake up commands. It was a very intensive kind of operations work. And basically with these improvements, we've now managed to get our record up to 286 days with like continuous, well, 239 days continuous, and the 286 days we had, I think, one set of resets. So our lifetime's gone up about 30x. Well, it went up at 10x from 30 days to nearly 300 days, which is a huge improvement. So Stuart's going to talk about ADCS later. So we actually were able to demonstrate, we believe is the world's first like PocketQube class active ADCS. So controlling the satellite and pointing it at things, that is what really matters, obviously. And we think we have demonstrated that now, and Stuart will talk a bit about that in more detail. And really Unicorn 2, O, P, and Q, which is our last three that have launched, just massively moved us forward. I think in terms of total theoretical like uptime, in terms of days, you have 3 satellites, and I think we could have got maybe 900 operational days. I think we probably got like 757-ish. So combined, we had about 2 years worth of heritage of those 3 satellites, and we got that in the last sort of 8-9 months or so. So we've been really fortunate that things have moved forward a lot. And now we're at a point where the platform is stable, and we're no longer freaking out about resets. When we first found our first ever Unicorn, it had 6,000 resets on it, and that's never good. So what can we see from space? Now we're in space, and we got a camera, and we got a stable platform. Like, what can we see down there? So you can do some analysis of the photos, and you can actually start to see things like airports. So we have Toronto Pearson Airport here. You can start to see runways. You can actually see a ship, which we believe is a cargo container. We've got the downtown core. We can see Skydome, Rogers Centre. We've got BMO Field. So you can start to see quite big things. And bear in mind, this isn't like true nadir pointing, so Stuart will explain a little bit about how we're doing what we're doing, and some of the trade-offs about how we've got to where we've got to. And one of the realizations is just that we need to improve the GSD a lot. So we're probably in the sort of 30 to maybe 40 meter GSD, 500 km orbit, which for Earth observation buffs is sort of more like Landsat, which is one of the really early missions. We think we can get it ultimately to about 5-ish meters. I'll kind of come on to some of that later on, but there's definitely a lot of scope for improvement. We can improve the sensor, we can improve the optics, we can potentially lower the orbits in the future as well. So there's lots of kind of options to make this really useful imagery and actually make it very clear as well. We're never going to get 10 centimeter resolution from orbit on a PocketQube, but we can certainly start to push up against the physics limits, and just now it's more engineering and reliability issues have caused those issues. This is the family photo really of, this is Q, I believe. So we started off really it was Earth. We weren't really sure what was going on at first. The first time we actually flew anything, it was either black pictures or white pictures, and we're like, well, Earth's not all white, and space is black, so that kind of makes sense. But it turns out that you really need to turn down your exposure settings, because Earth's actually pretty bright, it turns out. So really short duration exposures and raising the gain up. So you can kind of see the going from all white, we started to get the sort of curve of the Earth. We're tumbling at this point, and we start to do some sort of crude pointing. We dialed back the exposure a lot, and then we had this photo of Africa, the sort of top right one there, that was sub-Saharan Africa, and that actually starts to look like Earth, which was awesome. And then we got this picture in northern Germany, which was nice. We got our first island, and we can see the sea, and we can start to see clouds and things like that. And then over time, we've improved it. We started to bring down thumbnails, we increased the GSD, by going to full res. The full res still takes a long time, to be honest, especially over UHF, which is how pretty much all our stuff has came down at this point. You can see the improvement over time. We're starting to get a lot of nice photos of like the west coast of America, which is really important. And we're starting to get things like the Amazon rainforest here and deserts and things. It's definitely doable. You can definitely do this. It's definitely possible. And then we had 2 other satellites. So Q was the strongest swimmer. It worked really well pretty much from day one. Fortunately, O and P had some sun sensor issues, which I'm sure Stuart can talk about a little bit later on. So we struggled really to point them because we lost our knowledge, our main source of knowledge, or sort of fine pointing. But we still got a lot of nice pictures there, pictures of the Earth and curves and things like that, which is really nice. And that was our final shot from Q, which is quite nice. Once that was a full res one, and you can see quite a lot of detail there, and really just showing that you can image the Earth with PocketQubes. I mean, this is totally possible, and it's not just a pipe dream. We can actually do this, and we are doing it now. And can we build a business selling these photos to people that want to buy it? So really, the question is, what's coming next? So as was chatted about earlier in the day, Transport 16 is the next flight. We have 2 unicorns on this one, 2 more unicorns. So we're up to Unicorn 2R and Unicorn 2S, starting to run out of letters and alphabets. You can see how far we're getting along in terms of our builds. This will be the 19th and 20th unicorn, I believe. They're integrated to Falcon 9 just now, they launched from Vandenberg. Big upgrade, so GPS has gone back on. We had GPS in earlier flights. The problem with GPS is that we were able to get timestamp off GPS before, but we were tumbling, so we can get location lock. So you need to be stable to get location. The previous flight, we'd taken it off and we got stable, but we didn't have the GPS on. So this is hopefully the first time that we both have GPS and we're stable, so that should ultimately give us location on pictures, which is amazing. Like, we took some photos and like we don't know where they were. it's kind of crazy because we had time drift on our clock as well, which is a huge challenge for us, and ChatGPT doesn't know where they are either, so maybe they're Earth, maybe they're somewhere else, we don't know. And yeah, we haven't got too many improvements really on GSD in this flight. We have put on these nice silver skirt type things on the sides, and this is purely thermal related. So this general sort of 20 seconds on thermals. Our PocketQubes are small. Small is bad because it doesn't have thermal mass. You actually have to pay attention to thermal design. We worked with a consultant who did that, and generally you want your satellite to be shiny, so reflective is good in that situation because then it won't heat up as much during the hot portion of the orbit, and it won't cool down as much. And it's really the cold cases which has been killing us. And I think, to be honest, most satellites. We've also armored up the sun sensors with aluminium foil and other stuff. So yeah, future Unicorn 2T. So this on the right is actually a tower that's about 1 kilometer away from our office. And this is the current lens that we're using on the current unicorns. And that's sort of in the 30 to 40 meter GST range. We do have a few lenses we're looking at, and this is the same thing that we imaged with this new lens. You can see the difference in quality. So we still have to obviously work on getting that qualified. And also we're looking at other options in the market as well. There's a lot of interesting folks doing interesting things like tiny telescopes or doing some interesting stuff. Like Cavi were here earlier and they have some lenses and things. So there's lots of people doing interesting stuff, but really ultimately we need to improve that to get to the point that we have useful images on PocketQubes and need to come up with some sort of solutions there.